Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lindsay, and my colleagues Katie and Sonia and I will be running today's webinar, CK-12 Simulations and PLIX Interactives. We have lots to cover today, but before we get into the core content, I'd like to go over a few logistics about this Zoom platform. You should see two different options on your Zoom screen. One is specifically for Q&A and one is for chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have questions about CK-12, please post it in the Q&A window. Our presenters are going to pause for Q&A sessions after each of the major topics we discussed today. And the chat window is what it looks like you guys are already using for community conversation. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, maybe share with us where you're located, what state or country, your district, and even the subject that you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you're sending any general posts to everyone and not just to the CK-12, not just the CK-12 or the panelists. We want everybody to be able to join in that conversation. And then while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you are having any trouble with your video or your sound, please let us know in the Q&A or chat window and we'll see if we can help with that. So now that we've gone over the logistics for this webinar, it would be great if we found out a little more about you. We're going to launch a poll here in just a second that's going to prompt you to respond to two short questions. So the first question that you see here is to get an idea of how long you've been using CK-12. You can see that you've got options of whether you're brand new, less than a year, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. If you could click the one that applies, that would be awesome. And then the second question is going to ask about how familiar you are with CK-12's tools and resources. So on that second question, you're able to select all that apply. And your options are the CK-12 PLIX books, our simulations, PLIX, videos, adaptive practice, assignments, LMS integration, or none of the above. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys another few seconds to hopefully answer those two questions. And it looks like we have most of you who've answered. We'll give you just another second or so. And awesome. Thank you so much. Our team's going to look at these answers, and that can always help direct our conversation. So now let me introduce you to CK-12. The CK-12 Foundation, founded in 2007, is a leading nonprofit organization dedicated to improving student learning by increasing access to educational materials through the Flexbook platform and concept-based modalities. CK-12 offers free, high-quality, standards-aligned open content through an integrated set of tools for learning, including digital textbooks, concept-based learning resources, simulations, interactive practice, and more. And we give it all away for free. Our core content and curriculum is for middle school and high school math and science, with some K-5 math practice and videos. However, with the addition of donated resources and user-created content, you'll also be able to find books for other subjects and levels, especially related to social studies and English. So people often ask about our team. Believe it or not, CK-12 is run by a small team of about 35 people who are based in Palo Alto, California. And we have a few colleagues working outside of California in our India office. We're all here because we love our team, we love what we do, and we're excited to give people all over the world access to free quality content and resources. So with that, let's get started with today's presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Katie.
Thanks, Lindsay. So a great place to start exploring CK-12 is our homepage at www.ck12.org. Here you'll find an educational platform that provides primarily STEM resources that can be accessed anytime, anywhere, and on any device for free. As you can see on the homepage, there's a number of different ways to access our content. You can jump straight into our interactive simulations or PLIX, our practice, or materials schools have published on our site. You can also search for any content using our search bar, either on the homepage or from the top of other pages on our site. Below that, if we scroll down, are links to our major branches of content. These include topics for math and science, as well as other subjects such as engineering and technology under more. If we go into one, let's say physics, you'll see two different tabs, concepts and flexbooks. Many people know us as a flexbook company, and you can find those free customizable textbooks on that tab. However, we have moved beyond textbooks to concept-based learning. A variety of resources and modalities can be found under the Concepts tab for any subject. So let's take a minute and go back there to our concepts. And let's see if we can do that little piece. You'll also see on this page
We are testing some audio here to see if things are working. Katie, why don't you try your audio again? I think we lost you.
In this case, we have our content. You can see our feature content here as we work our way through for a lot of reflection within the concept of physics. And then if you look at those different types, the interactives and the PLIX, you can go through those different pieces. And we'll be talking about those simulations and those PLIX through today. At the top, you'll see the option to join. You want to definitely make sure to join and sign in. As for our simulations and our PLIX, you can see an initial sample, but you will need to join or sign up to see our full breadth of resources, as well as to track any progress you might do within our practice tool or any customization of textbooks. It's still free, so no worries about that. There's no level at which you have to start paying for our simulations, but you will need to log in. So let's talk about concept-based learning and our modalities. As you saw in the video, each CK-12 concept is supported by various modalities. Our core modalities include text, simulations, our interactive PLIX, videos, practice, and even real-world applications. While CK-12 offers these 6 primary modalities, as well as others like study guides, throughout our content, today we're going to focus on the 2 interactive ones, PLIX and Sims. So, I'll start off with exploring our PLIX interactives. In this section of the webinar, I'll help you get to know PLIX, including explaining what it is, the structure of each PLIX, and how to access them. Plus, we'll talk about ways to use PLIX in and outside of the classroom, to differentiate instruction, and to foster conversation. So our goal is that you are ready tomorrow to try a PLIX in your class. PLIX stands for Play, Learn, Interact, and Explore. So rather than being an assessment tool, this is a visual learning modality that allows users to animate ideas in a concept through a simple interaction. As for why you should use it, there are 1,130 plus interactives that span both math and science concepts and can be filtered by subject, keyword, concept, or standards. Plus, PLIX, like everything offered by CK-12, is free to all users. Simply sign in to access PLIX beyond your first sample. So PLIX are made up of 4 key components. The first is the description and instructional prompt, where the situation is set up and directions on how to interact with the PLIX are given. To the right of the description, you'll see the simple interactive, where you can explore the concept and even start over by refreshing the interactive. Challenge questions are the third main component of PLIX. These build from simple remembering and understanding to higher level discussions and applications of ideas. This is a great place to think about differentiating learning by having students try the first few questions or work their way through to the higher level thinking and discussion questions. The final main component of each PLIX is the option to learn more, which pops up a window with more information for students about a concept. Here they might see text, embedded videos, and examples. Encouraging students who are struggling to access these resources is another great way to personalize and support student learning. As a side note, anytime that we bring up a teaching strategy throughout this webinar, we'll post a brief description in the chat window so you can see it there. We'll also send you a full list as a follow-up to this webinar. Beyond these 4 major components, there are also a couple of environmental features within the PLIX that I'll show you in the upcoming samples. With that, let's dive into a PLIX. So here you'll see at the top of the PLIX the option to assign. You can quickly assign PLIX and other modalities to students in a CK-12 class group by clicking on that button. If you want to learn more about assignments, feel free to ask us in the Q&A window or check out our webinar on adaptive practice, which does include groups and assignments in more detail. So if we move into the core part of this PLIX, you'll see the description of the PLIX on the left, as well as the prompt on how to interact with it. Notice that it says to drag the red dots. If we go over to the interactive, we can see the way a user can easily interact with this PLIX. They click on those different pieces. They can see how the circumcenter moves around the outside or back inside as they expand the triangle. And after they've gotten a chance to explore this and see how those different pieces work together, you can go over and click on Learn More. This would allow them to see the text on perpendicular bisectors, maybe some embedded video and all those pieces, and then click on Challenge Me. Here you'll see a variety of different question types, from true false to multiple choice to some fill in the blank, or even categorizing, as well as this one here, and then the next one that has a select all that apply option. So in this case, they would be choosing multiple choices as they work their way through. So let's see if we can get a couple of these answers in here. They can click and unclick and then submit their answer and see if they're right on all counts. As we move to the last question in any PLIX, you'll see an open discussion question. And sometimes it will be directly linked to something in the cafe for PLIX. So this is the PLIX Corner Cafe. And you'll see the question and then any thoughts that students have had related to that particular PLIX and the question that we put on there. And we'll go through the cafe a little more again as we work our way through from this point in time. So let's look at another PLIX for a second. So we'll move on to the freezing point PLIX. Before we explore this PLIX itself, you can see in the top right here the options to give feedback and adjust the size of the text if students want a larger text size for this particular PLIX. You'll notice the PLIX about freezing point has the same description on prompt on the left and the ability to interact with that simple interaction for the PLIX. Now, if we click on the Challenge Me part here, you'll see a question, and let's try to get an answer wrong in this case so you see what happens. So it pops up the option to show the correct answer. So remember that PLIX are a learning, not an assessment tool, so students will be able to get immediate feedback and guidance. They can still also check on that Learn More option and see different reads about that concept and gain a better understanding of what's happening if they're struggling with a particular concept as we go. So now the question is how to access our PLIX. So where you can find it. So you can access it through the website on any computer or tablet with a screen size of 9 inches or larger. And this is a case where just using that website link, www.ck12.org, is going to be important for accessing PLIX. In terms of finding the PLIX itself, you can use the search bar, like we did kind of showing you at the homepage, to find content and modalities. You could open the PLIX from within any concept, like you saw in that introductory piece. And you can use the PLIX Corner Cafe, which you just saw. And then lastly, you can click on that circular PLIX icon on the homepage. You could jump directly to that PLIX browse page using interactives.ck12.org/PLIX. So let's see what this looks like. Once you're on this PLIX browse page, you have a few options. Remember to sign in at this point if you haven't already, and then you can choose your branches. This will help filter your PLIX according to areas you're teaching. And then you also can see up in the top right the option to search. So in this case, you could search for a title, a concept, even Common Core State Standards or NGSS Standards using those codes for those pieces. The results to this will yield 4 varieties of PLIX: exploratory, check for understanding, abstract, and real world. So let's look at each of these types now, starting with exploratory ones. So this first type is exploratory, and exploratory PLIX have no correct state. So if you see in this first one on the atomic size and radius of an atom, as you're moving up and down groups and across periods in the periodic table, it changes the size of that atom. And so they're really just exploring what that means as they work within the periodic table. Similarly, for the thermal and kinetic energy one, as they manipulate it and see how things move, they can see that while not necessarily fixed, there's a little bit of movement within solid ice as well as more movement in that water vapor. So a great teaching strategy for this would be to have students explore a PLIX and then share their different experiences and what they learned with each other about that PLIX. Our next type of PLIX is check for understanding. So these have one right state. There's something that they're doing trying to either reach a right state, or when they interact with it, it only goes to one correct state. In this case, the blood types, as they interact with it, they see which different blood types are options as donors and matching recipients. For the magic missing square, they work with composite area, and they're trying to see, okay, how do I manipulate these pieces to see what's happening and how that's working. So these PLIX could be used as a review of a concept. So students could see how well they understand that concept before an assessment or some other discussion about it. The third type of PLIX are abstract PLIX. These are great, often graph-based PLIX that allow students to manipulate the graphs or to change variables and understand properties of some particular concept. So in the first one, you see a concept on reflections. And so there's that reflection across the line y equals x, and you're manipulating those different functions to see what's happening. And the second one, we're talking about energy and momentum. And so you're manipulating different variables to understand how different pieces work together within that system. As a lesson, you could have students screenshot a few different states for a graph or a set of variables, and then explain what changed and how the change affected the graph or situation. Our fourth type of PLIX are our real-world PLIX. So these are application PLIX related to different situations. So the first one is a baseball diamond. In here, they can work with different angles and lengths to understand what's happening, how those interact and work with each other, all within the confines of that situation of a baseball field. The second one is titled, How Hot is Boiling Water on Mount Everest? And in this case, they're working with how elevation and altitude changes properties of water in this particular case. So as a lesson, you could have students you could have students try brainstorming other applications of a particular concept, or they could even design their own PLIX to address a particular concept and how it applies in the real world. So as you've seen throughout these PLIX, there are a number of different ways to have students work with and use PLIX. In class, you could have them use it as a warm-up, an exit slip, or exploration of a concept. They could do this as a homework assignment and post answers in Q&A or the cafe, or come in with an observation or question about the PLIX. You could have students differentiate their instruction by using the challenge questions, the learn more, and just the exploration in PLIX itself or in a simulation. And then finally, foster that conversation, whether it's in your class itself, using that open discussion question, or in the PLIX corner as part of the cafe. So one of those standards of mathematical practice particularly is that idea of constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others. And so that might be something that you could have students apply related to a math PLIX within the PLIX corner. And so let's talk a bit about what that looks like as we move into the cafe. So this is a great example of a discussion in the PLIX corner. One of the PLIX of the week was the one on thermal and kinetic energy that you saw before, with that kind of how molecules move within there. And note that you can assign the matching PLIX from the PLIX itself by clicking on the link in there. You could go into there and then have your students join the conversation. So here you can see the beginning of that conversation, and they can discuss their ideas with classmates. And the coolest thing about CK-12 is really accessing students across the world and what they're thinking at that time. So the last thing I want to say is you might wonder what to do if we don't yet have a PLIX on a topic that you're teaching. So if you want to personalize PLIX and you want to share it with your class, send your ideas to us at CK-12. The PLIX team is working with teachers to create new interactives. So what I would say is send a sketch and written details to interactives@ck12.org, because we always love to hear from you guys and your ideas. So I think at this time, I'm going to stop on our presentation on PLIX and see what questions we have coming in. And then later on, we'll let Sonia take over and talk about simulations. Great. Okay, what I'm going to do is pull up and share my screen in a second. Okay, so let me pull up a window and see what questions we might have. So it looks like we have one question from a viewer that asked about a complete list of content sources by videos, assessment, etc. They're using CK-12 as well as other EdTech content. And I would say that in that particular case, your content per topic is within any particular concept on there. So let me go to CK12.org and see if I can share that screen with you guys so you can see what it looks like. So hopefully you can see this screen as I'm in here. So in any particular concept that we're working with, so let's say physical science, we can go into scientific theory or something like that, and you'll see the different options for that particular concept, and this is prompting me to sign in. So give me 1 second and I will sign in to this demo account. And notice here, actually, this is a question. Let me pause for a second. Let me go back here and switch accounts. I can sign in directly, or I can sign in using Google, as you saw there. So in terms of students, we had this question about students needing to be members of CK-12 to access PLIX. They will need to sign in order to see that particular piece. Otherwise, they'll just get that sample PLIX and then the request to sign in from there. So in terms of seeing what's there, I would say definitely look at the different pieces. There's not kind of like an Excel spreadsheet for you per se for accessing different content sources and what you're working with. But I would say if you're looking for something specific for a set, I would go into that particular concept or into the matching Flexbook and see the resources that might be within that piece. We have another question about students logging in. And you can do so if you're looking at groups here. So if you go to CK-12 groups, you can set up your first class. This kind of walks you through what that looks like if you haven't done this before. So this is actually, I'm going to stay logged out for a few minutes and kind of see what setting up a class includes. You're signing in, and then you can either add students within the class or you can have students sign up on their own and then add them to your class. And one question as a part of that was about sharing a link for Google Classroom. And actually the cool thing about Google Classroom, so if I go back to kind of the main piece from here and pull up a regular page. So if I click on, let's say, life science here, anywhere you see this little green share me, we call it the share a plane option here, I can click on that. And then we have the option to share directly to Google Classroom. So you can actually share assignments, different resources, kind of all of our options within CK-12 within Google Classroom. If you're looking for specific practice assignments and you want those to show up with grades, you will need to also assign them within CK-12. But it's super, super simple to share resources within Google Classroom from CK-12. And then we had another question related to logging in and students having access, because that is one component for using kind of the wide variety of our resources. This question says, do students in a classroom need to have the same base for email, such as a district email or Gmail? They can use any email to sign up. It's often easier if you're using that district email because then all your kids are working off the same email set and you know what their accounts are and you can add them in yourself. If you're using something like a Gmail account, if your school uses Google Classroom or Google for Education and you have Google email addresses, regardless of the @ component of that email, signing in using the sign-in option from there and signing in with Google is actually your fastest, easiest option to get there. So I would encourage you to use those ones if you have school account email addresses, but they are welcome to use whatever email, and then you can give them a code to join your class. So I'll pause for another second and see if we have any other quick questions, and then I will let Sonia take over and talk about simulations. You guys are welcome to continue to post in the Q&A any questions you have, and we'll try to answer them via text or save them for the Q&A piece after Sonia's presentation. So I think with that, I'm going to introduce our newest member of our webinar team for simulations.
Thanks, Katie. As we transition to the next part of the webinar, thanks. for inviting me to participate in this webinar, and thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join. I am delighted to be here with you this afternoon to discuss CK-12's interactive simulations. I will start by focusing on our collection of 120 simulations, which we refer to as Sims, and show you how to navigate the Sims browse page and to search for a particular sim. I will then help to familiarize you with the general structure of the Sims and highlight the many embedded Sim features and resources that you can use when teaching. I will share some ideas I have for using the Sims as an instructional tool in class or at home to differentiate instruction and to dispel some common science misconceptions. Throughout the presentation, as we've been doing, we'll be posting these planning and teaching strategies in the chat window, so be sure to have that window open. My main goal is that by the end of this webinar, you feel excited and equipped to use these CK-12 simulations in your class. Pick one sim and experiment with it, even as early as in class tomorrow. So I used to be a classroom teacher, and this is an actual picture taken of a whiteboard in my physics class about 3 years ago. I spent my entire lunch period drawing this image for my students, trying to relate the law of reflection with what we see in a mirror. Thankfully, advancements in computer programming have led to something that was not available to me at this time: the ability to overlay a realistic physical scene with their scientific and mathematical descriptions in a much more compelling way. Here is an example of a CK-12 interactive simulation, which we call Sims. This is the prom night sim, a result of the beautiful collaboration between science teachers, animators, and software developers at CK-12. The prom night sim begins with an intriguing question and advances through a video explaining basic concepts and posing further questions to get students to think about the underlying physics behind a real-world scenario. Now, this video was recorded 3 times the speed, so this introductory video does move a little more slowly when you actually launch the sim. I often refer to the next scene as the sandbox, because it is meant for users to jump in, play around, and discover new things. In this interactive environment, you will find sliders for certain physical variables and graphs or responsive animations to illustrate the relationship between these variables. Next, there are 3 questions that can be answered by adjusting the sliders. So we call them slider-based questions. Each simulation ends with a set of real-world examples that invite the students to think about applications of the underlying concepts in different physical situations to promote continued learning. So here we are on the Sims browse page. There are many ways to access the Sims from within the CK-12 website, including the icon on the home page, as Katie showed you. But the web address www.ck12.org/sims also provides a simple shortcut for you, your students, or colleagues. Our collection of Sims are currently divided into 2 branches, physics and chemistry. Here we are looking at the physics tab with access to over 90 simulations that animate bobsleds, movers lifting pianos, satellites, bowling alleys, trampolines, and more. All real-world settings that are hard to replicate in the classroom. I would like to highlight that although these Sims are formally labeled as physics, their topical coverage is broad, and we do have Sims that relate to concepts regarding physical science, earth science, astronomy, and math. Even if you're not a physics teacher, I encourage you to visit this Sims browse page, and I am confident you'll find something for your course and level. Another exciting announcement is that we recently released a free CK-12 physics simulation app for your iOS and Android tablet devices. By clicking on either of these 2 icons, you or your students can easily download the app for free on iTunes or Google Play Store today. I would like to highlight that this app is only for tablet devices. All of our Sims, whether accessed online or via the app, require a 7-inch screen or larger. So it is important to note that Sims do not work on smartphones, although the rest of the resources on the CK website do. The exciting thing about the app is that it allows you and your students to download individual Sims to your devices for offline use. Say goodbye to wasting precious class time loading software or guiding students through multiple clicks just to access a simulation. All of the Sims are HTML5 based and can be launched on our website or via the app with just one click. Imagine this. A simple homework assignment involves asking your students to download a particular Sim to their tablet device so that when prompted in class, they can all launch the Sim quickly and easily without any threat of Wi-Fi or loading issues interrupting the lesson. The CK-12 team has worked really hard to ensure that you never lose a learning moment in your classroom. I hope you download the app and explore. Like I said earlier, this webinar is meant to get you excited and equipped to use these tools in your classroom, even as early as in class tomorrow. So going back to the Sims browse page at www.ck12.org/Sims, the second tab gives you access to 13 recently released chemistry Sims that are still in the beta stage of development. So you'll see the beginning of the full structure that you see for the physics Sims. These chemistry simulations all take place in compelling real-world settings and provide the microscopic explanations for macroscopic observations of the world around us. I hope you will also explore and experiment with using these new Sims in your classroom, and please provide us with your feedback on what you think and how it goes. There are many ways to explore our Sim collection and find a Sim for your particular class. You can simply scroll down, type keywords in the search bar, or sift through the filters. At CK-12, we are all about letting you do it your way. So we have organized everything by concept. The Sims can be sorted according to those concepts using this filter on the left. If you click on it, you will also see there's a second filter available to sort according to the next generation science standards for both middle and high school levels. These concepts and standards are also listed under each simulation. Clicking on a concept, such as the law of reflection, brings up a pop-up window containing the full suite of CK-12 resources around the concept, as Katie mentioned earlier, including reading, materials, videos, and assessments. Likewise, clicking on a standard associated with the simulation will bring a small pop-up into view with the text of the standard. In addition, when you click on resources, a worksheet version of the Sim pops up that can be easily downloaded as a PDF. There are a variety of ways in which these worksheets can be used, but I think it is most important to note that all of the embedded features and content in the Sims are accessible in worksheet format here. If internet is an issue at your school, or you would like a handout that will help guide students in using the Sims, or if your students just respond better to turning something in, these worksheet resources are currently available for all physics Sims, and ChemSim worksheets will be coming down the road. So now that we are more familiar with how to navigate through the Sims browse page, let's discuss the many features embedded within each Sim and share some ideas for how to use these features in your classroom. This is our hot oven Sim, highlighting the relationship between temperature and thermal energy. It begins with the opening question: why does the metal in the oven burn you, but the air does not? A really intriguing question for learners of all ages. There are a variety of ways you could use the introductory video in your course. I would project this big question on the screen in my classroom as the students walked in and prompt them to complete a quick write prompt at the start of class as a warm-up activity, asking students to put their pen to paper for 3 minutes, writing whatever comes to mind in response to this question, developing a habit of reflection, while informally assessing their thinking. I would then press play and walk students through the introductory video in a discussion format. The font size can be changed so that students can view the text from their desks, and the video can be paused along the way to facilitate a meaningful class discussion. For repeat users of the sim, the introductory video can always be skipped by clicking skip on the bottom left corner of your screen. Next, let's focus on the features found in every sim interactive sandbox environment. This is the runaway balloon sim that relates to the gas laws and addresses the big question, what happens to your runaway balloon when it reaches high altitude? In every sandbox, you'll almost always see 1 or 2 graphs at the top representing the situation, as well as sliders that allow you to manipulate the basic parameters. Each slider and graph in the system has an information tag that can be activated to learn more. The graphs also have many features activated by the gear symbol. Users can get info about the graph. They can zoom in to see the graph more clearly. And there's also the capability to hide the graphs. For students who are stuck or need more help, there's a tab labeled Tutorial, which opens a YouTube video of a screencast that carefully details how the simulation works in just a few minutes. In addition, there is always a link available to concepts that highlight the relevant material in the CK-12 concept page. For students who are up for a challenge, the Challenge Me questions provide a few related, deep thinking, open-ended questions. I think it would be a great exercise to project the sandbox on a screen in class, hide the graphs, and prompt students to sketch their predictions regarding what the graphs will look like on whiteboards. Then drop the graphs down to reveal the results and discuss. The main thing I want to highlight in this sandbox is that there are many tools available to help you easily differentiate instruction for your students. In this one interactive environment, students who are struggling are supported, students who are ready to move on are challenged, and all students are prompted to be curious and have fun. Lastly, this is our Phases of the Moon sim that connects the concept of circular motion with the big question. Can you tell time just by looking at the moon? Let's scroll through the introductory video, through the interactive sandbox environment, and focus on the third screen with the slider-based questions. When you click on a slider-based question, you are taken back to the sandbox and asked to adjust the sliders a certain way to answer the question. And once you submit, you receive immediate feedback on your submission. There is a way to also create new slider-based questions, so you, as the instructor, can tailor this sim to your specific course or level. I could envision prompting students to answer the slider-based questions in pairs during class. I could also see the completion of slider-based questions as a homework assignment because they provide specific prompts for students regarding how to interact with the sliders, which might be useful for independent learning. Now let's look at one of the newly created chemistry sims. The title of this sim is What's the Matter? And it opens with a big question intriguing to students of all ages. If ice, water, and steam are made of H2O molecules, then what makes them so different from each other? After reading the opening question, you advance directly to the interactive Sandbox environment. As you can see here, the Chem Sims vary a little from the interactive Sandbox environments, with sliders and graphs to those that provide a beautiful molecular overlay of a simple everyday scenario. Here we have ice, water, or steam in a glass cup. I know you chem teachers out there have huge smiles on your faces right now, because this is exactly how you want students to view the world around them. I love this sim. When you click on the arrow, there are no slider-based questions available yet for these 13 chem sims, as they are in beta development stage. But they do end as all other sims do, with a few more compelling big questions that have to do with other related real-world examples. I think it would be fun to prompt students to do further research on one of these examples for homework and share their findings with their classmates the next class period. You can also customize the simulation by adding more real-world examples. Another idea would be to prompt students to create their own example and upload it here, adding to our bank of community-contributed content. One of the main goals of these interactive simulations is to challenge common student misconceptions regarding science. This chart highlights some of the most common science misconceptions and a related sim we hope you can use to dispel these and enhance your students' overall conceptual understanding. There are some great examples of misconceptions here. I'll quickly discuss the first three. Particles of a solid have no motion. You could use the What's the Matter sim we just saw to highlight that the solid ice cube had jiggling H2O molecules. And we also offer another great chemistry sim entitled Expand and Contract that enables students to visualize the vibrating solid molecules that make up the Golden Gate Bridge and observe how their kinetic energy changes with temperature. The next one is one of my favorites. Mass and weight are the same thing. You can help dispel this notion by using the astronaut training chamber sim to show how the mass on various planets stays the same, but the weight or force due to gravity differs. This sim even allows the students to explore the gravitational constant on Dione, Saturn's moon. Pretty fun. Another common misconception is that gravitational force is the strongest force in nature. You can use the Portrait Gallery sim to start a great class discussion. If gravity is so strong, how does a picture remain hanging on a wall in static equilibrium? Now, for all you math teachers out there, I wanted to highlight a few sims that could be used to teach some important math concepts. The water fountain sim has to do with projectile motion and could be used in a pre-calculus class to teach parametric equations, where the x and y variables are dependent on a third variable, time. The driverless car sim is a fun way for students to learn about vector addition. The stadium wave sim could be used for a more complicated sinusoid problem and combination of functions after learning sinusoids. Lastly, the At the Crossroads sim could be used to teach conversions of systems of measurement, providing students with an opportunity to practice unit conversions across systems. Like I said earlier, although these sims are just labeled physics or chemistry, there are many that could be used to highlight real-world applications connected to a variety of STEM concepts. So that will conclude the Sims part of our webinar. Here's a review of everything I just covered regarding our CK-12 interactive simulations. I hope you will sign up, sign in, download the free app, explore and experiment with using the Sims in your class, even tomorrow. As you know, because you are all awesome teachers, there's no better way to learn than to just jump in and try it out. I would like to end this presentation with words of encouragement to prompt you to go for it. You are all here because you recognize that when you make material appeal to your students' interests, you foster an interest in science and math. You address the big question of all big questions. Why does this matter to me? We at CK-12 understand this and have worked so hard to create this collection of simulations for you that all take place in the real world, in the pool, on the stage at a musical recital, and so on. Because connecting science and math to the real world in a compelling way is tough. It constitutes the challenging work of a STEM teacher, and I truly believe these interactives can help you in this important work. Thank you so much for what you do, and we'll start the Q&A section right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Sonia, and thank you, Katie, for presenting on PLIX and Sims. I think we're going to open it up to questions here, and I know that Katie had a couple that came in after the last Q&A session on PLIX that she's going to answer, and then we've got the Q&A window open. We're waiting for more questions that you guys have about the two presentations, so fire away.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. We had a couple of questions that came in right as I switched over to Sonia, so I wanted to make sure to address them. So let me start by sharing my screen. Hopefully this is a little smoother this time around. So one of the questions was about using CK-12 with other systems. So if we went actually to our homepage or to most of our pages and scroll down to the bottom, you'd see this option where it says Tools and Apps. And for tools and apps, it will detail the 3 apps that we have. So the one that Sonia talked about, our physics simulation app, which allows you to access them offline, as well as our offline and online Flexbook app and our practice app. Below that, you'll see different integration as you work your way through here. So Nearpod, Blackboard, Canvas, Schoology, and even some options for kind of single sign-on or adding stuff to your CK-12 library. So that's one thing to know if you're integrated with a system like that, like a learning management system. Otherwise, if you wanted to share anything from CK-12, every page on CK-12 has a unique URL. So if I went into, let's say I was teaching Earth Science, and I opened something on rocks and rock types, and then open, this one's an assessment or a video, let's say this video here, I could share that via the share plane that I showed you guys earlier, or this URL at the top. So if it's something that you want to share as you're working your way through, go ahead and share that URL to another system. Alternatively, if we went into CK-12 groups by clicking on the groups icon, I could pick whatever group my kids were working with. Say in this case, I created a sample group with grades and assessment and assignments in there. And I could share something via Q&A here. So I could post a link in this discussion within a particular piece within a group. So that's another way to share external materials within CK-12. So there are definitely options in both regards, whether we're fully integrated or you just wanted to share something externally or not. The other question that came in was about PLIX specifically. And so if you remember, I said kind of at the end of my PLIX part of this presentation that we would love for you guys to design your own. You know, we have tons and tons of PLIX already in here. But it may not be specific to a particular topic that you are covering in your class. So if students were going to design some of those PLIX themselves, then you have a couple of options. You could just do it as a class assignment, or you could email it in place of your own designs, or in addition to your own designs, to interactives@ck12.org. And then we could see about kind of maybe using that as inspiration for our next round of PLIX that we're building. So hopefully that was helpful. Feel free to continue to post in Q&A for a minute, and we'll see if we can answer some questions. Sonia and I are both on, so you're welcome to ask questions about PLIX or about simulations or about CK-12 in general, and we'll take a few more minutes of questions for sure right now before we kind of do any wrap up. So we have one here that says, can you briefly explain the difference between PLIX and simulations? Yes, I would be happy to do that. So if you noticed in our simulations when Sonia was going through them, so let's go back to the home page and kind of look at a simulation first, because that is probably the more complicated situation. So simulations are a full system. So I am a former math teacher. So let's look up that water fountain, simulation that Sonia was talking about that I might want to use in my pre-calculus class. And these, if we go into the interactive component, So, there's some sort of setup for that as well, but that interactive component is a full system. So here you can see the angle that you're working with, the height of the fountain, the launch speed, where you're trying to get it to aim as you work your way through. And so it's really kind of a complicated system in many cases, or in the case of like Chemistry 1, you're really exploring in full detail kind of this polished explanation of a situation. Then the questions are similar in that there are questions for PLIX and there are questions for simulations. But these ones, as you work your way through, I can click on this and I can actually set this piece and see how that's working up. So in order to answer the questions for these ones, you're actually manipulating the simulation itself. And these have that added component of other applications that are in there. So we really tried to build kind of a whole environment from the Sandbox interactive piece to the slider-based questions to these extra pieces to explore this particular concept. So think about it more like a lab with all these different components working together. If we went back to CK-12, to our simulations, and then homepage and looked at our PLIX for a minute. Actually, let's go to the cafe and pull one from the cafe that maybe we haven't talked about yet. So you can reach the cafe here. You'll see the science and math corners, and then the PLIX corner where they're discussing different PLIX. And you can access them here or from the PLIX icon. So this is this week's PLIX, Revolutions of Earth. And if I go into this, there is still that same sort of description kind of startup, but you're really doing kind of one simple thing. So use the red point to revolve the planet cube around the sun and the blue point around the planet cube. And so you're looking at kind of a simpler situation. You're not looking at all of these different variables and the graph that goes with them and the different pieces. And then you have the challenge questions. So they both really try to get at the idea of allowing students to interact and work with something that they might not be able to see or have in their class. Like last time I checked, I couldn't put the sun inside my classroom. So this is a case where they could kind of play with something and see what that looked like and explore different pieces. So hopefully that answered that question for you.
Great. So while we're waiting for more questions to come in, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of wrap-up information for today. I hope that you guys got a lot out of today's webinars and will explore our interactives. Also want you to keep an eye out for upcoming webinars on additional topics that might be of interest to you. In 2 weeks, we're going to be running our Everything CK-12 webinar, and this is our overview of everything on our site. So in addition to the interactives that you guys explored today, we're also going to talk about adaptive practice and how to customize a flexbook. So you can register for this and any other upcoming webinars, as well as view any of the archived webinars on ck12.org/webinars. I also want to let you guys know about the CK-12 JUMPSTART page. The past summer, we ran a 6-week program and took the major components of CK-12 and went in depth week by week. The JUMPSTART page has all of our archived videos and transcripts and list of participants who might be in a city or state near you. So check that out. And then Katie just referenced the cafe, and this is another great way to continue the conversation, to network with other CK-12 users, to get support from our staff. From our homepage, you can click on Cafe to see the various forums for both students and educators. Katie just showed you one where we have PLIX, the PLIX form for students to go in and explore and check out our PLIX of the week. We also have Math and Science questions of the week. And then I would recommend for all of you all to join our JUMPSTART for Educators Cafe and keep checking back as we add state-specific forms pretty much every month. Also, before the end of this webinar, we'll encourage you guys to answer a short questionnaire to give us feedback on the content of today's presentation. We're always looking to improve your experience, so there is a link on screen and it's going to be sent to you in the chat window as well. And we're also going to send it in a follow-up email. This is just a few short questions that would really help us in preparing for the next webinar. So we appreciate your time with that. Again, thank you for joining us. I want to assure you that we have a very supportive team here at CK-12, and we're happy to help you in any way. The best way to reach us is to send an email to support@ck12.org. And also don't forget to let your social networks know about CK-12 and your participation in our webinars. We're on all the socials as CK-12 Foundation, or you can always hashtag CK-12 or CK-12 Foundation. So that is it for the formal webinar. Our Q&A question window is currently empty. So for you viewers who are still hanging with us here, we're waiting for questions from you guys. Otherwise, we're going to do a sign off. So feel free to go ahead and head out if you guys are finished, and we will kind of wait here for a few minutes and see what remaining questions there are.
So it looks like we have one question about the cost for CK-12. This is a good time to remind everyone who's still listening with us that CK-12 is 100% free to users at every level. We only ask you to sign in to access all of our resources so that you can have all of your stuff in your library in one place and track your progress and practice and all the rest of it. And so we can, support you guys as you're working through. But there is no cost to any feature on CK-12. There's no cost for our apps. There's no cost for accessing our website and all of our resources. We're happily funded by a foundation. So it looks like we just got that question piggybacked onto the previous one I was answering. We're funded by a family foundation that decided they wanted to change the paradigm of education and make cost not a barrier to good education. So you guys benefit from that, and that there is no cost on your end. So hopefully you will continue to share these resources with others who might benefit from them as well. So at this time, it looks like we have no other open questions. So I think we'll sign off from here. You're welcome to check this webinar out on our website. You'll see it on our webinars page. Oh, it looks like we have someone typing a question right now. So we'll hold off for another minute and see what that question is. So we have a question about a difference between concepts and the Flexbook material. So there's kind of two different answers to that piece, and I think the best way for me to do that is to share my screen. So let me pull up CK-12 again for a second. If we go back to our homepage and we pick a topic, let's pick algebra, for example. You'll see, just to let you know, these are my subjects. I demo, so I have basically all the subjects, but you'll see if you click show subjects, the subjects neatly arranged and organized from our site. So if I click on algebra from there, this is our concept list. And so if I picked any particular topic within here, let's say inequalities on a number line, this would be a concept. And here's an example of a video that we worked with where we partnered for a lot of our algebra videos at the beginning from Khan. So you might see some of those in there, and then a PLIX that goes with it. But our concept really includes all of the different modalities that go with that piece. So really trying to support student learning for a variety of different learning styles and in a variety of different ways, depending on what you're trying to teach at that day or the way in which you want students to access content. So that's the concept. You might see that within the read itself there, or if we go back to algebra as a whole, I could click on a Flexbook textbook. And if I was teaching, let's say, high school, I could go over there and say, okay, I'm going to teach Algebra 1. And you'll see different levels of books here. You'll see, a basic version of this. You'll see our Algebra 1 book here. And this PLIX book is really just the read modalities, sometimes with embedded videos in them or links to our other resources. But in this case, you could really say, okay, linear equations, I can now go to the linear inequality chapter and kind of see those different pieces. So this would be more like just the textbook component. And then one thing you should know is that anything that just has a title in it, so this Algebra 1 second edition, were our original flexbooks, and they're more like a traditional flexbook in that a lesson would contain multiple components or multiple skills. And so what we did was we took this Algebra 1 book and we broke it down into what we call concepts. And so if I look at the Algebra 1 concepts version and I go to that inequalities chapter, you'll see instead of just a couple of sections, we have more sections because we took any of those lessons and broke them into individual skills. And then if I clicked on this particular one, linear inequalities, I would see the text that went with it. I might see some embedded video here. And then if I scroll down to the bottom right now, I might see some other resources that would go with it. And these would be what you would be finding on that concept page as well. So hopefully that answers the difference between what a flexbook is and what concepts as a whole or a concept collection that's correlated is. So I think that's that piece. Any other, we have a question about a homeschooler who is going to self-learn. Which would they go by? I would say if you're looking for a structure to work off of, that you might want to pick the concept collection, because that one, if you notice right here, if I go to the concept collection, and you can navigate kind of through these breadcrumbs up here. So if I go back to Algebra 1 concepts, now I have a structure to work off of, and they don't have to explore. They're welcome to use concepts as a whole, but if they use the concept collection book, then they have the order they can work. And then if they pick that particular concept and they go back into here, let's pick a different one this time, inequality expressions, they'll see any practice at the top that's linked to it, and they'll see at the bottom the same set of kind of resources that are available, in this case a video, practice, and inequality PLIX, etc. So that might be useful for them to help them understand which concepts they might want to access and in what order that they would want to do that. It looks like we're having an issue with the survey. Let me double check that in a second, and we'll make sure that that is up and running for you if you wait a minute. It may be that there's a lock on it for some reason, but we'll get that worked out. We do have an open question about getting PLIX from the homepage. So let me go back to the homepage. The CK-12.org logo will always take you back to the homepage. And then if you wanted to access PLIX and browse them as a whole, under Explore, you'll see this little circular PLIX icon, and you can go from there. Okay. And it looks like the survey is up and running. We're getting some responses in. So if you're having trouble, you're welcome to just email us your responses at jumpstart@ck12.org. We'd love to hear your response, whether or not you can get that working for some reason or not. So hopefully that answered the question about getting PLIX from the homepage. And now we have a question about our dashboard. So let's go to CK-12 and look at our dashboard. So your dashboard is going to be useful once you've started picking subjects that are related to your what you're teaching, as well as picking or creating groups that work from here. So you'll see two different pieces to the dashboard. One is new content. Well, it just says new because it's a new piece. So it shows me things that I've recently viewed. So you can see the linear inequalities, inequality expressions, a PLIX, a sim that I've recently viewed. And you'll see what teachers are using in their classrooms related to the branches that you've picked as part of what you're teaching. So here are some text, which is what we call our reads, different practice options, videos, PLIX, simulations. So those are all recommended resources that if you haven't checked them out, you might want to look at that. You can also look at standards aligned flexbooks. So you could search by state standard let's say California, and then I could pick whatever subject I was looking at and the grade to see what books might include pieces of that. And then the other half of the dashboard is our groups feature. And so within the groups, I can see and I can sort based on groups that I lead or I'm a member of, classes and study groups, different assignments that we might have. In this case, no one started that one, but I could look at a different assignment here, and it looks like part of my class has started completing that. If there's new Q&A, I can add members to a group that I created. And you can kind of see just a quick recap of what your groups are, and then I could go into any particular group and see all the details for that group within our original groups option. So that gives you an idea of what your dashboard is. The one other piece that you might have seen there for a second was that concept map in the top right. And this concept map will allow you to create resources and kind of link concepts across math and science. So I could pick a topic like scientific notation and algebra, and you'll see that there are, not surprisingly, topics in both math and science that allow you to kind of expand and check out resources related to them. So that's probably the other piece that you would see within the dashboard. And then we had a question about people that missed parts of this webinar. We will definitely be posting the recording of this webinar up on our webinars page. So you'll see that at ck12.org/webinars. And when we send out our follow-up to this webinar, we'll put a link to that as well. So hopefully that will help you if you're missing any piece of that. And I think the last question, we just got a comment in here in terms of the learning curve for CK-12. CK-12 does have a lot of different components. And if you choose to customize a book and you choose to create assignments and you choose to do all of these different pieces at kind of that power user level, it may seem like there's a big learning curve. The short version is that I can access any of these tomorrow. If you're teaching a particular topic, I could go back to CK-12 and I could say, okay, I am teaching a unit on parametric functions. Search for it, pull up your resources. I can filter by grade, I can filter by type, and I can use that right off the bat. If you're looking for a full curriculum, you could go back to CK-12 and you could pick your subject, and let's say probability this time, and you could pull a book and use that as the basis for what you're working with. So you don't need to understand all of CK-12 and all of the different pieces to get started. You can just start using pieces as you go. And so if it's a case where you're trying to give extra support to kids, or you're trying to figure out what to do for a class for tomorrow, use that search feature. If you want that larger curriculum, you can use any of our textbooks as is in place of a regular textbook. So hopefully that will encourage you to just get started, even if you aren't necessarily using every feature CK-12 offers right on day one.
Well, thanks to all of you who've stayed on to the end here. We're going to go ahead and sign off, but we really appreciate your time today, and happy exploring on CK-12. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.